Today's verse in James talks about us being judged under the law of liberty. What's that mean? I thought the whole point of Christianity is that we weren't going to be judged by the law. Hey, I'm Steve. I put out short videos on the Bible each week, and to make sure you're notified when they come out, click the subscribe button in the lower right, and then also be sure and click that bell icon when it appears. Well, in chapter 2, verse 12 of James, he says, "So speak and so act as those who are to be judged under the law of liberty." The NIV says the law that gives freedom. And that gave me an idea for another poll question. What's your favorite Bible translation? Click the tag up there, and I can't list them all, but I put the English Standard Version, the New International Version, New American Standard Bible. I lumped the King James and the New King James together, and then I put other if none of those work for you. But take the poll. I'd love to see the answer there. Well, whatever Bible translation you use, one of the words in the Bible that has the most meanings is this word law. Sometimes it's used of the law of Moses, and even that has different meanings. It can be just the law sections of the first 5 books of the Old Testament, or it can be the entire first 5 books of the Old Testament. It can be sometimes a part of the Bible. It talks about the law and the prophets, and sometimes the Old Testament, and sometimes it's just the whole Old Testament. And then earlier in this chapter, James referred to the law, the royal law. And we saw that's, love your neighbor as yourself. So what's it mean when the Bible uses this word law? Well, the basic underlying meaning of all those is it's God's standard for living. His principles to live by, to do and not to do. You see this right above this in verses 10 and 11. It says there, "For whoever keeps the whole law, all of God's standards for living, but fails in one point has become guilty of all of it." That's the idea, the basic idea, God's standards for living. But then what's the law of liberty? James says you're going to be judged, you who are going to be judged under the law of liberty. Well, first thing to remember is he's writing to Christians. You got to keep that in mind. So we are not going to be judged by our works. We're judged under God's system of grace, God's free offer of salvation that we receive based on our faith. God doesn't look at our level of works. He looks at, do you have faith or not? Now, James is going to make a point. We're going to look at it. All right, your faith, if it's true, will result in works, but it's not our level of works. It's not even a level of faith. Is it big enough, strong enough? Jesus said, if you have faith as a mustard seed, you either have it or you don't. If we have faith, we will receive salvation. So what then, why is it called the law of liberty or the law of freedom? Well, because it gives us freedom from the effects of sin. It gives us freedom from the guilt that sin deserves, the eternal condemnation that guilt deserves. It gives us freedom from the effects of sin in us. Our mind, as we continue to live by faith and look at God's Word, He transforms us, gives us freedom from all of those effects of sin. Well, you might just ask, okay, James, why didn't you just say, we're saved by grace? Other people say it that way. I think he's trying to point out, especially in this section, in this context, that it's not just God overlooking sin. We're to be judged under the law of liberty. God has a plan, has a structure. He dealt with sin through the death of Jesus. We receive that through our faith. There is more there than God just saying, hey, it's no big deal. What's your response? Stop and apply this. What's your response to this idea of being judged under the law of liberty? Do you ever see that maybe before and get a little knot in your stomach? Uh-oh, I'm going to be judged under some law. Am I good enough? What's your response now? How should you respond? God wants us as believers to have assurance. I know I'm forgiven. I know as a Christian I'm going to heaven. I know God is working to transform me. I'm judged on my faith in God, not in me and my abilities. My faith in God, what He wants to do. That should give us that peace that the assurance gives. Well, you're going to see that about God, about His Word, about what it means, what the law means. You'll see all that and more when you read the good book like a good book.